First thing we're going to do is, well, today we're going to do JFK, the Cold War. Before that, we're going to go over, like, Mr. Rollins, so one of you guys can time me in 5 minutes. We're going to go over what went on yesterday. So any one of you guys got time me? Thomas is going.
I got you.
You got me?
I got you. Cooper.
Is it recording?
Yes.
All right. Let me know when to start.
You start right.
All right, so U-2 bomber.
Spy plane.
Spy plane. What happened with it?
Got shot down.
Over Russia.
Where?
Over Russia.
Over Russia. Why is it important?
Because we were spying. We didn't have to fly it. We got caught spying.
We got caught, exactly. All right, so CIA. What do they do?
They're basically the spies in the United States.
Okay, they got information, but how they do it? Spy. Okay, Eisenhower Doctrine. Nice.
He's the one that promised military protection for other countries against communist aggression.
Thank you, Rez. What else did it do? Anyone? It's basically got us involved in a lot of stuff that we didn't want to get involved in. Eventually, that would become like Vietnam. Okay. So the interstate system. What is that? What happened? Why is that important to Cold War? Move our military. I talked to some of you guys yesterday. I told you I went to Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. And there's also a military base out there with missile silos. You guys probably saw them on some anti-Trump Hillary Clinton stuff. What it was is there's really no reason for those interstates to be out there except for those missile silos. And that's how they got there. I mean, there's nothing in South Dakota. Military. But it ended up being good for our economy, so we'll take it. Bring the ship.
Takes us to the brink of war.
What exactly does it mean? Like,
Build up
your military. Exactly. Biggest thing with that you gotta remember is, basically, we were always getting ready for a fight, but we never ended up getting in a fight. Yes. Not directly with the USSR. Checker's speech.
About food.
A dog.
What's the dog? Yeah.
It was a poodle.
What?
That was about food.
Yeah, but why did he give the Checker's speech?
Doesn't it have something to do with like his daughter, like the dog?
He was taking money.
Yes, he was. So Nixon was taking money, accused of taking money that he shouldn't have as part of bribes and things they shouldn't have got. The term checkers comes from, and this is going to be a terrible impersonation. He said, I've never taken anything that I never should have gotten, but someone gave me money and we used the money to buy a dog, and we named the dog Checkers, and my daughter loves the dog, we're not giving back the dog. So, bribe, money speech. But that's where that comes from. So that's how I remember from when I was you guys' age, because my teacher taught me that. That's what I did. And then ICBM.
Intercontinental ballistic missile.
Intercontinental ballistic missile. So why was that important?
We're not for.
For Cuba.
It was mobile.
It blows stuff up.
Eventually. Yes, it was mobile. So the missile isn't exactly what really blows up. It just holds what blows up. So what this did is basically it said we could go to Alaska, which is right next to Russia, have a missile silo and say, if you guys screw up, we can nuke you. What about Sputnik?
Russian satellite.
Mm-hmm. Why was that a big deal?
They got space.
Space race.
Yeah, that and we didn't have to go to space. They put that up there so they can.
I hope you guys can read that. How much time do I got?
40 seconds.
Okay, so basically what I want you guys to take away from this is everything here is preparing for war. So trying to get the intelligence for war, to gain intelligence for war, saying, hey, we got your back if you're ready to go for war, preparing for war, being scared of war, taking money, which basically his bribes came from. He was conservative, he's anti-communist, but at the same time, when you're crooked, you're crooked. And then basically having material for war. And then the Sputnik, the important thing to remember about that is people were scared. My granddad was telling me, he's like, people were scared completely. I'm gonna go over that, I don't care. We're scared completely, and all Sputnik did was go. It was only up there for 15 minutes, but the fact is they beat us. So, if you guys pull up your Evernote, that leads into Kennedy. And there should be a video of the election, or Nixon. Use your headphones, please.
You want me on TV?
Oh, you can pull up on TV?
Well.
Oh, that way.
No, they won't go with it.
We'll go here.
Yeah, it's gonna be questions.
You guys get the video up?
You want me to put mine up there?
Hmm?
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's wrong.
Yes.
How do they get it up on TV?
I have it.
Grab the video itself.
I have it, but I mean, I can go on that.
The one about the election.
I can get on there and watch.
Yeah, Kennedy and Nixon.
All right. There you go.
Watch it up here.
Beginning of a dialogue between the two leaders seemed to clear the way to a reduction of the tensions that threaten the peace of the world. Moscow, 1959.
Everything that I say will be recorded and translated and will be carried out of the Soviet Union.
The warm smiles were to fade by the following spring. In May 1960, on the eve of the summit meeting, Russian guns brought down a high-flying U.S. spy plane deep in Soviet territory. Condemned in the United Nations, the U.S. suffered a severe blow to its credibility. The door to negotiations with Khrushchev slammed shut. The path was paved for a change at the top in Washington. Vice President Nixon was the Republican choice, a determined opponent of communism at home and abroad. But Nixon faced a tough campaign against a new force in American politics. John F. Kennedy, the Democrats' candidate, believed that peaceful coexistence with the Soviets was the only hope for the world, and a majority of Americans agreed.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Kennedy, however, added a warning.
Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
All right.
Vice President Johnson, Mr.
How do
Speaker,
I stop it?
Just hit
Mr. Chief Justice, President Eisenhower,
You're on two different screens.
Vice President
All you have to
Nixon.
do is-
President Truman, Reverend clergy, fellow citizens.
Okay. So Kennedy's and Nixon's election is deemed the first modern election. It was the first presidential debate to be on TV. And a lot of people thought Kennedy would never get elected for a couple of reasons. Number one, he slightly leftist policies when you're fighting a giant leftist problem across the world in the USSR. Number two, the civil rights thing was a big deal. And honestly, in my opinion, I personally believe he was only a Democrat because of his stance on civil rights. And it's one of those things where it's such a strong stance despite what your other beliefs are. He had to associate with that. And his other issue is that he was Catholic. A lot of people said, Nixon, a lot like all this bashing that you've seen, Nixon used to do things and say about Kennedy that you can't elect him because he's only going to listen to the Pope. So that ended up being some of his big issues. But what modern day connections do you guys think about where people, like what have Hillary and Donald said about each other that reminds you of things like that?
They was talking about like how she supposedly deleted all those emails. He said that if he was elected president, she'd be in jail.
Yeah, so they started bashing each other with emails. What was some things said about Donald?
About maybe, whenever they're going to something, I don't know.
So like one of the things I mentioned was I was in those missile silos in South Dakota, and there was actually a commercial by Hillary where it actually had the two guys in there, and we're still paranoid about war at all times today. At this base, there are 9 planes, 3 groups of 3. 3 are in the air at all time, 3 are on the top of the runway ready to go, and 3 are getting prepped ready to go because we are afraid of nuclear war still to this day. Especially when Russia was saying if Hillary gets voted president, things are not going to go right. And it was a big issue. So this election ended up being important because it was the first modern election. In fact, there was a study shown that your physical appearance does affect how you do in presidencies. At the time, it was basically like you guys probably remember going from VHS to DVD. They went from radio to TV, and they said that if you listen to the debate on the radio, a lot of people said Nixon won. But if you watched it on TV, you saw a lot of people say Kennedy won. A lot of the reasons is because Nixon at the time was very, very sick, sweating bullets, and just looked like overall crap. And he looked nervous even though he was just physically sick, and a lot of people like a confident person. So that was his election. But now we're getting into the big first issue, and there should be another video with the Bay of Pigs.
You're gonna do this. I'll make this up for you. No, that's okay. I think it's easier than just your. Maybe you can do what you want.
The first thing, when you guys watch this video, you guys are going to hear the term nationalist, and I want you to pay attention to that and really think about what it means, okay? Because I'm going to ask you what it means to you, because there's a difference between a nationalist and a patriot. And I want you guys to understand this so that when it's done, you can understand why. Because the Bay of Pigs led to the overthrowing of the Cuban government into a communist government.
What's worse, as the invasion day grew near, Kennedy and his advisors ignored reports that Castro knew, or at least suspected, what was going on. Meantime, the Cubans made no secret as to how prepared they were.
In Cuba tonight, thousands of militiamen are walking sentry duty beside sandbag fortifications. The radio blares martial music. The guns point out to sea. The sea from which the government keeps saying the United States intends to invade any hour now.
And as it turned out, the Cubans were right.
It was April 17, 1961. Brigade 2506, a group of 1,500 CIA-trained exiles, invaded Castro's Cuba along this beach.
They woke me up to tell me that there were landings. At that same moment, before dawn, all of our planes were already in the air.
Sure of American air support, the invaders were shocked to discover that the only planes they saw were Castro's. The invaders pleaded with Washington and Defense Secretary Robert McNamara for help.
They requested for application of U.S. air power and sea power. And President Kennedy absolutely refused. Without air cover and U.S. military backup, the Brigade of Exiles was trapped. And within 5 days, most of Brigade 2506 were Fidel Castro's prisoners. The CIA had in effect predicted that the Cuban people would be so pleased at the opportunity to overthrow Castro that they would rise up and support the invasion force. It became very clear that was a misjudgment.
A misjudgment that greatly strengthened Castro's hold on Cuba.
The main effect of the failure of the Bay of Pigs invasion was to destroy the Cuban underground resistance. Castro government arrested, by its own numbers, about 100,000 people. Instantly, that broke the back of the resistance. The Bay of Pigs invasion was a gift from the U.S. government to the consolidation of the Castro regime.
It also helped consolidate communist influence in Cuba. In December 1961, Castro declared, "I am a Marxist-Leninist, and I will be a Marxist-Leninist till the end of my life."
I'll just keep that up. People go right next time. Okay, so Fidel Castro took over his own country, but why? So he overthrew his government and established a communist government. And like that one guy said, JFK thought, well, we had a lot of support from local Cubans and said, you know, they'll fight against it, they won't argue with him, but ultimately this nationalist overtook the government. And the reason I bring this up is because there's a lot of things that you guys have seen today that remind me of that. So ISIS is a quote-unquote nation. A nation is a people with a shared common goal and interest. It's not necessarily a country. That's like if you guys have been paying attention to the news and seeing all these oil pipelines going through the North Dakota, they refer to these people as the Sioux Nation. It's a group of people with a common background and common belief. And because Fidel Castro was such a great leader, he basically turned into Hitler Part 2. Germans in World War II were nationalists. They believed in their people and their culture was better than others, and they wanted to take over a country and have a nation state, which is a people with their own country. And so why would they fear Fidel Castro and his nationalist beliefs taking over Cuba?
Because they're scared of communism.
They're scared of communism, but particularly why would nationalism be more, why would it make him more afraid just because he's a nationalist in it? It's basically like brainwashing. The best way I can put it is, and today in the Middle East, you got ISIS, which I would consider a nation, and Al-Qaeda, things like that are considered a nation. It's very easy for them to go up to young people and say, look, I'm like you, you're like me, I believe in the same thing as you. If you follow me, then we will be great together, which is a lot of what they're doing over there in the Middle East. And that's how Fidel Castro got to take over Cuba. That's why he was able to overthrow. The Americans thought, we hate communism, so hey, they'll probably hate communism. But because Fidel Castro preached all this stuff that you'll get, which we find out communism government doesn't give you, they followed him. And it scared the everlasting daylights out of the American people because Just like we strongly believe in our capitalist system, they strongly believe in their communist system. But more importantly, the biggest and scariest thing is the geographic location. The USSR and Cuba are obviously in cahoots with each other because they're communists and they're trying to spread communism. And we went from having someone all the way across the world whose closest point to us was Alaska, which at the time was still maybe a territory, but physically far away from the contiguous 48. Now, we have a little island 90 miles off of Florida, and we're worried about things that they can do to basically destroy us. And basically, that's what leads into the next problem, the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. Within the past week, unmistakable evidence has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island. The purpose of these bases can be none other than to provide a nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere. Only last Thursday, as evidence of this rapid offensive buildup was already in my hand, Soviet Foreign Minister Gromyko told me in my office that he was instructed to make it clear once again, as he said his government had already done, that Soviet assistance to Cuba, and I quote, pursued solely the purpose of contributing to the defense capabilities of Cuba, unquote. That, and I quote him, trained by Soviet specialists of Cuban nationals in handling defensive armaments was by no means offensive. And it would be otherwise, Mr. Gromyko went on, the Soviet government would never become involved in rendering such assistance, unquote. That's the also, which says, acting therefore in defense of our own security and of the entire Western Hemisphere, and under the authority entrusted to me by the Constitution, as endorsed by the resolution of the Congress, I have directed that the following initial steps be taken immediately. To halt this offensive buildup, a strict quarantine of all offensive military equipment under shipment to Cuba is being initiated. All ships of any kind bound to Cuba, from whatever nation or port, will be found to contain cargoes of offensive weapons be turned back. It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union. I call upon Chairman Khrushchev to halt and eliminate this clandestine, reckless, and provocative threat to world peace and to stable relations between our two nations. I call upon him further to abandon this course of world domination and to join in an historic effort to end the perilous armed race and to transform the history of man. Our goal is not the victory of might, but the vindication of right. Not peace at the expense of freedom, but both peace and freedom here in this hemisphere. And we look around the world, God willing, that goal will be achieved.
Okay, so clear things up. We sent another spy plane, but this time we sent it over to Cuba. At this point, Cuba was a communist government. We suspected them of talking with the USSR, and we flew over there. You guys saw the one image of the ground, looking straight over, and we saw nuclear missiles. And instead of getting really mad about this, we actually took them to international court. We went to international court. Cuba was there, and the United States came forward and said, "Look, we have evidence of you guys with nuclear missiles. You guys said you wouldn't do this." And they said, "No, we don't." And the United States says, "Are you sure you want to stand by that stance?" They said, "Yes." At which point the United States took out a picture and said, well, here's the picture of the nuclear weapons. So they got caught lying in national court. That happened after, but before all that. But I was talking with my granddad. My granddad is going to be 70 in the next week. And he was, let's see, this was 63, so he was like a senior in high school when this happened. My mom's side of the family, to my maternal grandfather, is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He remembers telling me for 2 weeks straight he did not sleep because he did not know we were going to go to nuclear war. It actually got to the point where our ships and their ships were within a couple miles of each other in the ocean. And my grandfather, the biggest reason why he was scared is, you know, we were building a lot of military stuff to set up for the war. So if you're a smart military man, the first thing you're going to do is take out their resources. Anyone here watch football? The NFL. What is the Pittsburgh's team name? The Steelers. Pittsburgh is known for the steel industry, and the steel industry made a lot of material. So a lot of people thought that Pittsburgh, in terms of a tactical thing, not so much as population, like killing the most people possible, would be one of the first places to go because after that you destroyed everything. They can't produce any more material, the steel is gone. Just like today, here's a scary thought. A lot of people think that Charlotte might be on the top 5 list if anyone decides to screw us because of our banks. Exactly, who said that? Thank you. New York is number 1 because of their population. They're number 1 in banks. We're number 2 in banks. And a lot of people don't realize how much money that brings us in. Charlotte Douglas is actually the 4th busiest airport in the world because of it's just all business travel. It's not commercial. So that was the Cuban Missile Crisis. But away from my granddad's story is this was as close to nuclear war as a lot of people said we ever got. If basically one person shot at one another, yeah, it was a matter of who's going to shoot first, and it lasted 14 days. There was a movie about it in '94. I think Tom Hanks is in it. But this is let's put it this way, guys. We were, some people say, within hours away of nuclear war. There was a story that went around one time that even JFK didn't account, that said that at this time, if they don't retreat, shoot them. And he didn't take into account the time differential. And so if they had waited another hour, there would have been a shot fired. He didn't take into time zones. That's how close to nuclear war we were. But that ended up being probably his biggest his biggest accomplishment, because in his campaign, as you guys know, you guys have seen it with Obama and just about anybody, they'll say one thing, but when something like that happens, they'll do another, because ultimately you never know what's going to happen. Like Obama said, he would never take credit if Osama got assassinated. Sure enough, when I'm a senior in high school, I'm watching Sunday Night something or another, and they cut it off, and it's Obama saying, "We killed Osama." I mean, but I got to give JFK credit. He said he wasn't going to start a war. He didn't start a war, but he wanted peaceful negotiations. However, he did make threats. But it's just a matter of what's going to happen when that comes to be. So after this, let's see, we've got the assassination video, right? This is the USSR response to Cuba.
The scheme took root in the
No, go ahead.
Is this the assassination?
Berlin. The two Cold War superpowers faced off over the increasingly contentious issue of Berlin. By the 1960s, West Berlin was a thriving cosmopolitan city. In the words of one Cold War historian, the West German capital was a permanent advertisement for the virtues of capitalism and democracy in the middle of communist East Germany. Still, West Berliners lived with the fear that the communists could cut off land access to their city as they had done during the Berlin blockade in 1948. Jobs, prosperity, and freedom, and security afforded by the American military presence beckoned to the hungry, disenfranchised, and repressed of East Germany. To the exasperation of their communist leaders, millions fled across the open border. By the time President Kennedy met Nikita Khrushchev in 1961, millions of East Germany's best and brightest had left the country, and the mass exodus had become a crisis for the communists.
Marxism was born in Germany. If it does not prove itself as superior and vital here, then we have not won.
Tired of haggling over the divided city, Khrushchev issued an ultimatum to the American president. Withdraw U.S. troops currently occupying West Berlin, or face a blockade. Kennedy stood his ground.
We will at all times be ready to talk. If talk will help. But we must also be ready to resist with force if force is used upon us. The source of world trouble and tension is Moscow, not Berlin. And if war begins, it will have begun in Moscow and not Berlin.
The war did not come to Berlin, but a wall did. Barbed wire and concrete 12 feet high and 100 miles long, isolating West Berlin. East German border patrols had orders to shoot to kill, and they did. The wall was a hateful thing, Khrushchev admitted, but what should I have done? The East German economy would have collapsed. The much-hated Berlin Wall finally settled the nagging German question and averted war in Europe. But events elsewhere threatened to push the world to the brink of destruction.
It's the Berlin Wall. The Soviets were pushing west. Obviously, we were pushing east. We're trying to contain the communism. And they met in Berlin, and there was really a wall running through Berlin. And so this is the literal point of capitalism and communism. A lot of people saw this place as a point of contention. The reason why JFK made the comment he did about the war will start in Moscow and not Berlin is he was saying, if something happens in Berlin, what he's saying is you can blame both sides because we're involved there, they're involved there, and we do not want to be at fault for what could be the first nuclear war. So when he says the war starts in Moscow, he's pinning the entire issue on the USSR. And things were incredibly intense there. One of the coolest experiences I had in college, I was in a European history course. We had a German man come speak to us, and he was from East Germany. And he was trying to tell us about when he snuck over to West Germany. He got caught, they went over and got him and brought him back. And the things that they did to this guy were pretty torturous. You guys have heard of waterboarding? So basically what that is it makes you, you're not physically drowning, but the way it works is it makes your body think it's drowning, even though there's no water technically in you. They asked him, they accused him of being a spy, obviously, because why would you want to leave the great communist government? He was telling me that they kept him in rooms that were pretty much long enough for his bed to be here as soon as you walked in the door and for him to walk next to his bed, but he couldn't step sideways because there was a wall, and he had to sleep like this. Because if they went in there and he was on his back, he could push himself up and fight. And they lived like this for 15 years. And because he tried to escape to the West. Berlin was intense. He said that if you walked across the west wall and you looked across the east buildings, you could see people's heads with snipers aimed at you in case you tried to cross. I don't know how we got across in the first place, but he said it only lasted 5 minutes. I think someone was onto him anyway. I wouldn't be surprised because they're onto you with everything. The Berlin Wall was a big issue because basically we see that as our stopping point. That is, look, communism has already taken over east of that. What's west of that, we cannot let spread. It's part of our containment policy. But after that, let's see. Thank you for pulling this up. Where's the assassination? Does that continue the video to the assassination? I think I have. I'm sure I have. Let's see the PowerPoint.
Wasn't there like a torture method in the Cold War, like MK Ultra or something like that?
MK Ultra? No. I just know that it's not a great one here. Just have one.
So what do you need?
I have one on my PowerPoint that I had. Oh. Okay, I'll just see. I can explain it, basically. All right, so Kennedy got assassinated on November 22nd, 1963. He was assassinated by a man named Lee Harvey Oswald. You guys have probably, if you watch History Channel or shoot it, you guys remember the show Mythbusters. They call it the magic bullet. Some people are saying that the bullet should have never hit Kennedy, but the man who got blamed for it and took the heat for it was a man named Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald is pretty much famous for assassinating Kennedy, but his biggest issue was Lee Harvey Oswald was born in what's modern-day Minsk, Belarus, which is an Eastern European country. Basically, he was born east of the Berlin Wall in a communist country. But he was defected and lived here since the time he was a young kid. So a lot of people say that he couldn't have been indoctrinated enough to want to do it. And in fact, when they picked him up, he didn't really put up much of a fight. He just kind of said, "You guys are I'm Patsy. You guys are only picking on me because I was born in Minsk." And back to my granddad, because my granddad tells me all these stories because I was telling him what I was teaching. I asked him, I said, "Do you remember when Kennedy got shot?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "I was a senior in high school. I was going from my second period to my third period. Some kid in the class just made the comment, 'Kennedy got shot.'" And my granddad obviously didn't believe it. But my granddad lived in the inner city. So all the houses and schools were stacked on top of each other. He basically lived from the front door of the school here to the baseball field. So what he did is when he was in third period going to his next class, he said, "Hey, can I go to the bathroom?" He got up, he left the school, walked to his house, picked up her transistor radio, and came back in time for the teacher to believe he still just went to the bathroom. And sure enough, he had his transistor radio on, and he turned on really low, and he heard on the radio that the president had been shot. And that's how my grandfather found out. And I asked him, I said, how did you guys think? And he said, obviously everyone's first thought is the USSR is behind it because he stopped the Cuban Missile Crisis. JFK is obviously the president. Obviously there's a target on your back if you're the president. So I remember him asking us, what did you think was going to happen? And he said, honestly, in my opinion, probably just because of the way times were. He says, I thought we were going to war because, again, he said, it had to be a USSR guy. It couldn't have been someone domestic. And ultimately, Lee Harvey Oswald, what happened to him was he was on his way to court one day and someone shot him. I think it was only 9 days after he shot JFK. If you guys ever want to watch a really cool movie, there's a movie about JFK came out in the early 90s and it has Lee Harvey Oswald. And the guy who plays him, you guys know him as Sirius Black from Harry Potter, or Commissioner Gordon from The Dark Knight movies. He plays Lee Harvey Oswald. But that's everything I got today, but I do have an Padlet for you guys. You guys just need to create a timeline on my Padlet. And I'm gonna play you guys some music from the time too. So my Padlet is. Mr. Rollins, can I bring up your email? Since I sent you that email with the stuff on it. My
Padlet's on there.
Go on the Padlet? Yeah.
It's on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.